Good morning, good afternoon to all of you. It's really amazing to be here with the World Trade Center associations from around the world. My name is Anna Jankowska-Eriksson. I'm a market analyst at the International Trade Center. And I'm here today with my colleague Mehrose Khan, who also works with me at the International Trade Center. So we're here today to introduce you to a tool, a multi-agency tool that we've been working on for several years called the Global Trade Helpdesk. And our hope is to help you simplify market research for your members, for your clients, and to really make it easy and accessible to compare markets and to compare opportunities in a really quick and simple way. Just to give you a bit of background about myself, I have a master's in global finance and trade. I worked for about 7 years at the OECD in Paris in trade analysis. Then I worked at the World Economic Forum, and now I've been at the International Trade Center working specifically on trade intelligence and trade data for the last 3 years. So what I'd like to do with you today is to do a brief presentation just to talk about why this information is important, what sort of information we're covering, and then do a live demo and just show you exactly how it works and what it is that we're offering and what it is that we're putting at your disposal for products and countries across the world. And then if at any point you have any questions, please feel free to directly put them in the chat box. Mehrose will be answering them as you go along, or he can also keep a list so that when we have a question and answer session a little bit later in the session, we'll already have those out there in case anything comes up. And you can also interrupt me, or we can save the questions at the end. I'm really comfortable with either arrangement. There's only 37 of us at the moment, so I'm happy for this to be a discussion. So if you'll allow me, I will just share my screen for a quick presentation. Are you able to see my screen? All good? Great. So
yes.
So as I'm sure all of you are very well aware of, last year was a really interesting year for global trade. Now, it wasn't as bad as it was in 2009 in the last crisis. I mean, we expected the decline to be around 20% around June. In the end, global trade dropped in goods about 5.6%, according to the WTO. And global trade and services, the estimation is that it went down 15% last year. But I think what's really interesting to note is just how different the impact has been across regions. We can see that Asia has been relatively resilient. I mean, this is driven in a large part by China, but also other countries. We can see that in Europe, the impact has been moderate, let's say, but we can definitely see that in other regions, there's been a really dramatic impact. From UNCTAD estimates, it looks, WTO estimates as well, it looks like Central Asia, Africa, and the MENA region are the ones that have faced the sharpest decreases in terms of exports, but also in terms of imports. So what's interesting to take away from this is just that if your businesses and if your members are really concentrating on only one region and focusing only on those opportunities, they could be putting themselves at risk. And this is really an important time to think about strategic market diversification. And so our goal today is to really just give you a tool that can help you easily compare opportunities across regions or across markets to give you a sense of where the opportunities might lie. Now, the good news is that trade is really starting to recover. We could see, according to our ITC monthly data, which we collect, that as of September, we could finally see a year-on-year and month-on-month solid increase in exports at the global level. Now, clearly, this is the global level, so some countries are doing better than others, but the good news is that the recovery is really starting to take shape, and we're starting to see this. And what's also good news is that we can see it broadly across most sectors. So what we're looking at here is from the UNCTAD Global Trade Report that came out now in February. And they're looking at year-on-year percentage changes in trade at the sector level, comparing Q3 and Q4, 2020 with 2019. And what we can see is that there were two sectors that were evidently still continue to be very impacted, and that's energy and transport equipment. Now, the transport equipment isn't so hard to, is really easy to understand given what's happened with travel and given what's happened with travel restrictions. Clearly, there's a smaller demand for airplanes at the moment. We can also see on the textile side, there's been a surge in demand for textiles. And part of this is driven by the demand for face masks and everybody buying a lot of materials and the changes in this market or in this sector. But what's nice to see is that really we can see recovery across sectors, and it's starting to become more evident. So this is really good news for businesses around the world that slowly things are getting better and there are emerging opportunities. But it's not necessarily the same trade picture as it was in 2019. We can definitely see that there have been a number of changes in consumption patterns. Now, we're not hoarding toilet paper anymore, but there's definitely been a surge in terms of interest in health products, fitness products, all of the office equipment that we need to work from home. There's been really a strong surge towards sustainability, towards environmentally friendly goods, towards locally sourced or closer to locally sourced, regionally sourced goods. There's been a stronger interest in where your products come from and how they impact the planet and how they impact society. So this has definitely been a strong trend, especially in apparel and textiles and these sorts of sectors. So we really need to reevaluate our strategies and make sure that we're taking advantage of opportunities. Another thing that continues is temporary trade restrictions or changing trade policies. So what we've seen is that clearly last year, with COVID starting, there were a number of export restrictions on medicines, on personal protective equipment, across a lot of products, even food sometimes. But what's interesting is that this still continues. We can still see it even now. There's continuing restrictions and liberalizations sometimes on specific products. So it's always good to be aware of what the current policy is, both in your market, but also in the destination market that you're targeting. So in light of these changes, in light of all of the action and all of the movement that's happening, how is it that we can really help businesses adapt their strategies and prepare? So what we want to help is businesses to stay informed about opportunities, to really be able to compare them, and also to consider diversifying your market risks. So if your business is really only operating in a couple of markets, where else could you go to really hedge your bets and to take advantage of the different impacts that this is having across regions? So here's just an example from a US perspective. So here we can see these are imports, trends in the imports of electrical machinery by China from the US market. And we can see that year on year, between 2019 and 2020, there was a significant upward trend of nearly a quarter, of 25%. But if we compare sound recording and producing apparatuses, which are not that different, we can see that there's the opposite trend. So it's really a product by product difference, and it really it requires a lot of diligence in terms of really looking at the data very carefully. So one of the things that we'd like to help you do is to get a sense of how economically attractive different markets are for your product. So we're going to look at things like market size. We're going to look at the evolution of demand over time. We're going to evaluate the dynamism. How quickly have exports or imports in that market been growing in the last few years? And we're also going to take a look at export potential. Now, when I say export potential, this is an economic model developed by my colleagues in the International Trade Center. And what it does is it takes the quantifiable factors that we can measure to give us a 5-year projection on the expected level of trade. Now, to try to make this a little bit more clear, because I always find that things are clear for me with an example. So if, for instance, we take the export of beef from the US to Japan, what we're going to look at first is the US's global market share of beef. How much of the global market does the US have in beef? Then we're also going to look at demand in Japan. what has the demand been in the last years, and how has that grown? We're going to take into account the distance. We're going to take into account the tariffs and any preferences that the US has in the Japanese market. And we're going to take also the estimation of GDP growth and population growth. And we're going to put all of this together to estimate a benchmark level of exports that we would expect based on these quantifiable factors. So one thing to bear in mind here is that we're not taking into account regulations. We're not taking into account consumer preferences. There's some things we can't catch in this, but in all of the quantifiable measures that we have, this is the best estimation that we've been able to create to give you some sort of benchmark to compare as to where there might be opportunities or more opportunities in the coming years. So we call this export potential. So we're working with across 11 different agencies. So at the ITC, the World Trade Organization, UNCTAD, the World Bank, the Inter-American Development Bank, UNIDO, the International Chamber of Commerce, among others. And the idea is to really take the essential information that we bring to the table and to put it together in one place, because the goal is to really simplify market research, especially for smaller firms. So really the reason that the Global Trade Helpdesk was created is really to empower SMEs and to make life simpler for them, because they are the ones that tend to perhaps not have all of the resources to conduct really detailed market research. So we've brought together this information and put it in one place, the Global Trade Helpdesk. So what I'd like to walk you through in using the Global Trade Helpdesk is a few steps. So first, we're going to check for COVID-19 relevant policies, especially if you're exporting products that have been strongly impacted by these policies. It can be quite relevant. Then we're going to evaluate demand and also look at forward-looking export potential for your product. Look at the estimates. So how attractive is this economically? We're going to look at market access in terms of tariffs. Do you have a preferential tariff in this market? What is the tariff advantage? Is there a rule of origin associated with this? And what would be the certificate of origin that you would need to produce to be able to qualify for that? We're also going to look at non-tariff barriers, non-tariff measures, or regulatory requirements. There are many different ways to say this, but basically, what are the requirements to be able for your goods to get to this market? Because in all of the surveys we've done with businesses around the world, they say that it's not actually tariffs that are the biggest constraint for them, but the differences in the regulatory requirements across markets and the inability to standardize all of it. I mean, because they're so different and there's so many different requirements across markets, this can really be the constraining factor for a business in reaching the market. We also want to consider market niches in certain products. So here I'm talking about things like fair trade, organic, private labels that are not mandatory, but that can help you get a better price or reach a different market niche. And last but not least, we provide a bit of information on institutions that provide trade finance, trade promotion agencies, IP offices, and in some cases also some company information to help you perhaps put your plan into action, or at least have a few reference points on how to do so. So in order to show you how this works, I'd like to walk you through an example. I'm going to go to Global Trade Helpdesk, and I'm going to look at the exports from India of bath towels or kitchen towels, product code 630260, and I'm going to look at the German market in particular. So if you'll excuse me, I'm going to stop sharing for a second and switch screens. Sorry about that. I didn't turn off my presentation. That looks better. So Sorry about that. Global Trade Help Desk. Here we are on the homepage. Can you see my screen? Yes, good. Okay. This is Global Trade Help Desk. The main part is here is the search. And this is how we're going to give you the information. This is the level of detail. It's going to be at the level of importing or exporting market, at the HS6 to start with, product level, and at the destination market. So this is going to be relatively specific information. We have a little bit of information about the data sources, a little bit lower here, so you can get a sense of the data coverage and where it comes from. And also to give you a sense, these are the founding organizations, and further information, you can always email us as well. There's contact information at the bottom. Also, the site is available currently in English, French, Russian, and Arabic, and Spanish, and soon it will also be available in Portuguese. So if you're more comfortable in another language, please feel free to switch that up here. One thing I also wanted to just start with is here at the top, at this turquoise banner, we can see that this is the COVID specific information. So especially now when we're still have lingering impacts in our new normal, this is a good place to at least have a look in certain products. So what I mentioned before was the temporary trade measures that have been put in place by countries in response to COVID-19. And what we can see here is the map of these measures, but we can see that this really continues to happen. So we can see that the EU introduced its export control on vaccines at the end of January. We can see that the US is extending its application to prioritize PPP allocation for domestic use. We can really see that this behavior definitely continues. And here below is a searchable database. So if you put in the name of the country, you can see the specific, both the liberalizing, so where the decreases in tariffs have been. If we take, I think I used the United States yesterday as an example. So here you can see, for instance, the restrictive PPP restriction that's still in place, that's estimated to be in place until next June. But you can also see that there's several liberalizing measures in terms of products which you can actually import more cheaply. So this is just one place to look when you get started, just to be sure that you understand both if there are any restrictions or any decreases in tariffs in both your exporting and importing market. I also encourage you to have a look through the resource section, because this brings together resources from all of the different partner agencies. I definitely recommend, for instance, the ICC has some excellent resources on digital marketing and on adjusting your business plan to COVID circumstances. And there's really a bunch of great resources here. So if you have a moment, I encourage you to have a closer look. But what I wanted to walk you through was to show you exactly how we perform a search on Global Trade Help Desk. So we're going to search from India. I'm going to select product code 630260, which is bed linen, table linen from terry cloth. And then here, I have two options. I can either type in the market that I'm interested in if I already know which market I'm interested in, or I can ask to help me find markets with export potential map. So if I click this button, I can see that it's going to propose different markets here. So I was interested, I can see that there's certain ones, the labels aren't popping up very well here, but I was interested in the German market. So what we can see here is that the US has the largest export potential for this product from India, and here are the other top 10 markets. And I would like to look at Germany for a diversification opportunity. So what we have first is, once again, what we see here on this page is the attractiveness We also have the tariffs, requirements, time and cost, partners, and alternative markets. It gives you a sense of where the end of the page is. We can see how that progresses. But first of all, how attractive is the German market? So we can see that it's the third largest global importer of this product. We can see that the total imports were 289 million nearly in 2019. We can also see India's perspective in this market. So it has a 13% market share. In the last 5 years, imports have grown by 15% on average. And we can see that there's an export potential or a forecasted benchmark figure of 66 million. And what's interesting here is that we can see that the exports in the last year in 2019 were about 37.7 million. So there's still, we estimate, quite a bit of room for growth here, or there could be quite a bit of room for growth here in the next 5 years. So once we've thought about the economic attractiveness, we also want to know how much is it going to cost to actually get our products there. So one of the things we want to consider is import tariffs. Now we can see that there is a preferential tariff for Indian towels in this market. And we can see that here, when we look a little bit more closely, we can see that there's a 12% MFN duty. Now, the most favored nation duty is the one that's applied to all WTO members. So this is the one that you automatically get, or that Germany will automatically grant to all other WTO members. But we can see that India qualifies for the general system of preferences. So it would have a preferential tariff of 9.6%. But this is not automatic. It's not that just because you export a towel from India, it will automatically get that percentage. What's important is that it meets the rule of origin. Now, in this case, it's a specified process. So we can see is that it's extrusion of man-made fibers accompanied by non-woven process, needle punching, and making up. So basically, just the fact that the fabric comes from India is not enough. There is actually a processing that has to take place in India for this to be considered an Indian towel. Now, in order to prove that this is the case, there's also a certificate of origin that is going to be required. And this is an example of the type of certificate of origin that you're going to need to provide. So now that we know how much we're going to pay in tariffs, let's return and have a look at the mandatory requirements. So once again, these are the actual binding regulations. We can see that in India, and in the case of India, there are 0 domestic requirements on towels, but we can see that there are 2 pre-shipment and inspection requirements in Germany, or in the EU, we should say. There's a testing requirement and there's a labeling requirement. Now here, normally there would be a link. In this case, if there isn't, if we click on more details from Market Access Map, this is going to give us, the exact regulation that we're talking about here. So here you can see the actual summary of the legislation and the exact laws that this is attributed to, and you can find all of the details here. The label mark shall be durable, easily legible, visible, accessible in the case of a label. So you can really get all of the detailed information here so that a business can really be sure that their towels will meet the specified requirements. Now, so we know how much it's going to cost us. We know what the requirements are. Here on time and cost to export, these are indicative figures from the World Bank Doing Business report. So here, this is information that comes from the World Bank, but it's not product specific. So this is basically a benchmark figure to give you a sense of how much it costs and how quick it is to export things from India relative to other countries. But please don't take this as a guarantee or an indication of how much it will cost to you. For this, you will really need to seek more detailed information from a logistics service provider, and that's going to be really specific to your mode of transport. So please don't take that as a promise. And as mentioned, the last part is really about thinking through who could possibly help you in this process. In case you're a new exporter and you've never had trade finance before, or you don't have a clear market strategy, or you want to register your intellectual property, or you're looking for potential buyers, this is also a section that is worth exploring. Now, to give you just a little bit more detail, each of these, there's more detail in each of these modules. So here's where we've had the tariffs and regulations. And I also just wanted to show you that there's a navigate procedures section. And this is information that comes from the WTO Trade Facilitation Database. And here, in case you are actually a new exporter and aren't familiar with the institutions, the single window, or the procedures that you need to, that are required domestically in order to export your product, this is a good place to start. I also just wanted to flag that in case you have a specific brand name that you're really interested in protecting internationally or in your target market, we have as a partner also the World Intellectual Property Organization, sorry, and they have a global brand database that's searchable in order to see if your brand name is already taken in another market or internationally. And you can also check with the different intellectual property offices, both across different markets. And WIPO also gives you the opportunity to register, if it's not already taken, you can register it internationally for IP protection. So these are the services that you can find here. Now back to identify partners. So if you'll notice here, there's a login button, and there's only one piece of information that's potentially accessible to you or more accessible to you through the login. So if you'll just let me log in, I'll show you exactly what I mean. So I am already registered, so I have an account, and specifically a trade map account. So I will just type in my login here. Oop. So now it says my name here. It looks like it started our search over. Sorry about that. I should have logged in earlier. And we were looking at the German market. And now it's kicked me out again. That's something, well, that's a bug we're going to iron out. But allow me to show you where we were in identify partners, and I can tell you how this normally works when there's not an IT bug. So the business directory takes information from two separate sources. One is Connect Americas from the Inter-American Development Bank, and they have amazing coverage, especially in Latin America. And that company information is accessible to everybody, always. We also have information from Trade Map, which is an ITC tool. And this gives you information from Dun & Bradstreet and from Compass. So here, for instance, we can find companies in Germany that are listed as importers of bath linens, beds and quilts, bed linen, and fabrics. So for instance, if I take bath linen, just as an example, it will give me the company information for these companies. It will give me the website and the names of the companies. So this is one potential place to start when you're looking for importers. But we'll also discuss other sources of company information that can perhaps be more strategic. Here we have the intellectual property office information in case you would like to check if your brand name is already registered. We also have trade finance providers. So these are Indian banks that offer trade finance within the market. And also we have the trade promotion organizations or the local institutions whom you can consult in order to help you in case you need advice. So last but not least, in case you decided that Germany is not an attractive market and you'd like to try something else, in a single click, you can compare, for instance, opportunities in the French market or another market. But the idea is that here you can access information from 15 different databases around the world to really at least have comparable information and easily accessible in one place. Now, what I'd like to ask you to do is to perhaps just see if you guys can do one search as well, because I think, at least if you're anything like me, I always, my questions always come up when I'm actually looking at it or trying it or doing it. So if you guys are up for a learning by doing exercise, I would like to just show you which example I would like you to do. Here we are. Go back to the presentation for just 1 minute. Are you able to see my screen? Or have I messed that up? I think I messed that up, didn't I? Here it is. Okay, now we should be good. So we looked at this example, but what I'd like you to try is this one. So I'd like you to have a look at perfume being exported from France to the United Arab Emirates. So if you can go to globaltradehelpdesk.org, and we're going to select from France, product code 330300 and United Arab Emirates, and then click go. And if you could answer these questions possibly about the information you see. What is France's market share in the UAE market for perfume? 20, 40, or 45%? How many product requirements are there in the United Arab Emirates for perfumes? And does French perfume have access to a preferential tariff in the UAE market? Is there any tariff advantage if you're exporting from France to the UAE? So if you click on the poll answers, you'll be able to participate. And we'll give you a couple of minutes here. For those of you who are, I see some of you are already answering, this is great. So once again, what is the market share that French perfume has in the United Arab Emirates? How many product requirements are there? And does French perfume have a preferential tariff? So what do we mean again by preferential tariff? So when we looked at the last example, there was the tariff that was for all WTO members, and there was a lower tariff due to a preferential trade agreement, right? So this would be a preferential tariff if there's a trade agreement and you can actually get a better rate than the other suppliers. So what can we see? I can see that 4 of you have voted. Don't be shy.
I think just a quick question also, when you're doing the search on the home screen, Anya, if
Yes.
go button looks like it's disabled, does that mean you're missing some information maybe?
It might be. What is, have you put in?
Vivek, if you can tell us, were you able to put in
Yes, Crystal, I was just typing in, but it seems my go button is disabled. I've typed in the entries which was mentioned here as I see in the screen.
Okay, Vivek, we'll do it again together in just a moment, just to be sure.
Okay.
This seems,
Okay.
this doesn't happen. This is never.
I just wanted to clarify, do we need to log in first?
So logging in is not obligatory, but it will give you access to, especially, so where are you where are you based, Vivek?
I'm in India.
In India. So if you register for a TradeMap account in India, which is free, you will have access to all of the company information, and logging in will give you automatic access to that company information.
Okay, but I was just checking if login is necessary to do the search right now.
Login is not necessary to do the search.
Okay.
Logging in only gives you access to the additional TradeMap company information data, which because of trade map conditions and legal obligations from Dun & Bradstreet has to be done through a login and can't be just broadcast to the world. So
Understood.
that's really an administrative requirement.
But I still see my go button disabled.
Okay, let's
Vivek,
bear with me just one moment, Vivek. We'll do it together, and then we can
Sure.
walk you through it and see if
Sure.
it still doesn't work for you.
Sure.
Now, all right, maybe 10 more seconds, and we'll end the polling and look at our results. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2. Great. So 10 of you voted. Let's see. So if you can see the results here, we can see that 80% of you chose the 45% market share, which is correct. And now in how many product requirements are there? 80% of you also chose 7, which was the correct answer. And 90% of you said there is a preferential tariff for French perfume, which is actually not correct. So let's have a look at this again together and see why we thought so. Okay. So Vivek, once again, we selected exporting, right? You put
That's right.
in France.
Okay.
And then you put in 330300, and then you waited for it to suggest perfumes and toilet waters, and you select here, and then to which market? And we said United Arab Emirates, right? United Arab Emirates. So you selected it from the drop-down list, and your go button should turn a slightly lighter green.
Oh, yes. Now it has come.
Okay, good.
Right.
Happy to hear that that is working okay.
Thank you.
So one thing I also want, the reason I chose this example is I wanted to have a chance to explain one thing to you. Is, for instance, here, we can see how economically attractive it is, right? So it's the 4th largest global importer. It's an interesting market, and France is obviously doing extremely well in it. But what's interesting here is our export potential figure is 322 million. This is what we would expect the import to be on, well, the benchmark level anyway, for the UAE, based on their previous imports, based on the growth projections. But we can see that France is actually exporting 390 million last year. So it's already exceeded our benchmark. Now, what I want you to know is that it's a benchmark. France has an amazing brand power with its perfumes. It has some of the best perfume names in the world. So it's not a bad thing to exceed your quote unquote potential. In fact, I think it can also be a good sign. But the point of having this benchmark is it can help you find underserved markets. But there are reasons, such as really strong brand power, that can help you already exceed your potential. So this is a great sign, and I'm sure it's going to move in that direction in the future as well. Now here, in getting to know the import tariffs, when I click on find more information, what I can see here is that this is the MFN rate of 5%, and this is the tariff charged to all WTO members. So there is no trade agreement between the UAE and France that takes into account perfume. So you can see here, there is no other tariff. There is no preferential tariff. There is no information about a trade agreement. So that means that all of the other exporters of perfumes, whoever they are, will also face a 5% tariff in the UAE. So France has no advantage in that respect. So I'm sorry if that was a trick question, but I wanted you to really carefully evaluate when you have a preference and when you don't, and to be clear on that. So, and we were definitely right about the product requirements. I think one thing I just didn't get a chance to show you is, like, if you mouse over this little question mark in case you're saying, okay, well, what is a product requirement? I mean, that sounds like it could be anything. And this will give you an idea of exactly what kind of regulations we're talking about. So here we're talking about production process and technical specifications, things related to consumer health and safety. So here we could be talking about residue limits or phytosanitary regulations, this sort of thing. So this gives you a sense of exactly what we mean in these different groups of categories. Great. Well done. I just have a couple of slides left, and then I wanted to open the floor to any questions, comments, and anything you might want to tell me. If you'll bear with me for just one last moment, because there's just a few more details I wanted to share. So let's say we have found one or two attractive markets. Like, so what do we do next? What are the other factors that we really want to take into account? So if we're selling perfume, we want to look at prices in that specific market. So we're going to, like now, especially in times of booming e-commerce, all we need to do is to go to any of the e-commerce platforms and just check out what do the other perfumes look like? What are the price ranges? What could we possibly expect in that market? Next, we also want to check what our transport costs are going to be. These vary dramatically by mode of transport and especially by product, depending on the weight and depending on how it needs to get to the market. We also want to have a sense of, as I mentioned before, the consumer preferences. So this is things like packaging, a lot of specific things can impact your ability to compete in the market. So this is really a time that you want to gather more specific information about how you would need to adapt to really be competitive in that market, and distribution and buyers. And so as World Trade Center associations, you guys clearly already have a really strong network of businesses and companies, but you can also consider other sources. You can consider virtual trade fairs, which have really been booming as well. But don't feel that the company information that's here is really definitive. There's really a lot of different places that you can find that, and especially through your own networks is always a great place given your strategic importance around the world. So that is all I had prepared in terms of slides and in terms of navigation for you. You can always reach me at iamkovska@intrasen.org. Crystal will share the slides and the recording as well. So in case you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I would love to be in touch and happy to answer any questions. So open for questions.
Well, thank you very much. This is Abdul Qadir Bahman from World Trade Center, Kabul, Afghanistan. That was a very interesting training, and thanks, Anna, for the good presentation. I hope that we could organize the similar training for our members in Afghanistan as well. So the first question is that regarding the content of the training, I don't have any question. I just want to know if we can receive the presentation, that we could review that later on. If there was any question, I will definitely get back to you shortly. So my specific question is that if we organize some similar training programs for our members in Afghanistan, what kind of support the ITC will provide for us? Is there any charges or it's free of charge? That's one. And the second question is that I see there are more than 10 organizations which their logos are there in the Global Trade Helpdesk.
Yes.
But as the World Trade Center Association is a support organization for this platform as well. So is there any possibility that you could also include this organization to the list as well? Because when we see our organization as there, I'm sure majority of the WTCs will support this platform, and they will try to somehow encourage their members to use this platform. So this is my question.
Thank you for these questions. So in the first question, definitely no charge, and we are very happy to work with member groups. If you think that this could be of interest to your members and you'd like to maybe schedule another session or something like that, we are certainly open to doing so, and there is absolutely no charge. The Global Trade Helpdesk is really created by these international organizations, and the idea is to provide free, accessible, and relevant information to global businesses, and especially to small and medium-sized enterprises, which are comprised like the vast majority of global businesses. So happy to work with any of you. In terms of the getting WTCA on the website, this is something that I am not important enough to decide on, but it's something I can raise and get back to you on. So unfortunately, I do not rule the Global Trade Helpdesk or the 11 organizations. Sorry. So, but definitely a great point, and let me explore that. So thank you so much for the question. Other questions? All right, go ahead. Pamela.
Yeah, it's Pamela from World Trade Center, Metro Manila. Thank you very much for that very useful presentation that you just did. My question is, I have not been able yet to navigate the website, but I see that there's a business directory here, and how could any one company, a local company, be qualified to be part of that directory? And what would be the requirements or qualification to be so?
So it's a great question. It comes up actually quite a bit. So for the moment, as I mentioned, the sources of our business directories are the Connect Americas database, which is actually a place where any company can register. And then they have a verification process that they do. They screen companies, and I'm not sure exactly what they're, I mean, I think it's a relatively, I don't think it's too intense of a process from what I understand. But if you, I can send you also the link of how a company can register. And if you register via Connect Americas, that is in a really easy way to be included, and to be included both within this platform, but also in the Connect Americas, which will connect with businesses, especially in Latin America, who have a really strong presence on this platform. So very easy, but our company information is one of the things that we're really trying to improve, and we're really trying to make more comprehensive and more interesting. So if you also have other ideas on how we could link to other sources for this information, if you have business registries, or if you have associations that could be interested, this is also something that we would love to explore. So I'm very much open to innovating on that issue. But this is the way that you can automatically be included as a company, or pretty much automatically be included as a company, assuming you're a real company and you can meet the minimum requirements for Connect Americas.
So just one follow-up, Anna. Would a company have to have experience in importing and exporting for them to be qualified?
No, but what's interesting is that the Connect Americas database now is putting in flags so that companies that have verified experience in importing or exporting will have a specific flag, so that you'll be able to see that perhaps they are a verified exporter, but it's not a prerequisite at all. So even newer companies can join, and that's not a problem.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
I can add also, just with Connect Americas, one of our members, so World Trade Center Querétaro, Carlos Uribe, has a direct connection with Connect Americas. So if you reach out to him, he should be able to assist.
Thank you, Crystal.
Thank
Hi,
you.
Anna. This is Dharaya from World Trade Center, Mumbai. Thank you for the wonderful presentation. And I've been using your website, trademap.org, extensively, in fact. And it's a wonderful place where, where I can get information of all countries of the world in one site when I look at imports or exports. Okay, so now say if I'm looking at a particular commodity being exported by India to, say, Germany, like you mentioned. Okay, and if I'm looking at the 6-digit HS code, and if I go to trade indicators, okay, so there's a particular column saying annual growth in value between 2015 and 2019. So I want to know whether it's average annual growth in these past 4 years, or how is it calculated?
That's a great question. So if you look at the top of the column, there's also like either a little eye with a circle or a question mark. If you hover over that, you can see the specific formula that's used. I can't remember. I think it's actually an exponential average, if I remember correctly, but you can see the exact formula there. And what Dara brings up is that the information, especially the market attractiveness information, comes from trade maps. So the import growth, all of those trade statistics come from trade map. Now, trade map, if you want to dig deeper, if you want to see at the national tariff line, if you'd like to possibly see, there's monthly data available for certain countries. This is a place where you can, and there's a direct button on Global Trade Helpdesk, like see more details on trade map, and there you can really go and dig deeper. So it's great that you say this, because this is definitely a way to find more information. And if you're, if you were really looking for really detailed trade statistics, this is definitely a great place to go.
So yeah, I did look at the metadata, but I didn't understand the formula actually. That's why I thought I'll ask you.
Okay, were you able to see the formula?
Yeah, formula I saw when I pointed at that I, that's the metadata, right? Exactly. I did see the formula, but I didn't understand the formula basically. So I thought I'd just ask.
Okay, feel free to reach out to me by email, and I'm happy to put you in touch with the person that does this calculation, and you guys can debate it, and he can walk you through all of the steps, I'm sure. This is exactly what you're talking about. This column is the one that we see in Global Trade Helpdesk in terms of the import growth for the market in the last 5 years. So specifically this column that we're looking at. So great point.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Usually the questions we get are, what about services data? Where's the services data? And then we tell you services data is not at the moment collected in a disaggregated enough and let's say comprehensive enough way across countries to really be meaningful and for us to feel good about putting it and being able to match it with regulations and all of the wealth of information we have on the good side. So it's a project for the future, but we're not quite there yet in terms of global services data, and especially really disaggregated and bilateral services data in all of the 4 modes of supply. So we're not quite there yet. If you're curious about how often it's updated, this varies by indicator. The trade data is updated automatically whenever it's updated in trade maps. So the trade map is updated on a monthly basis. Different countries report their trade statistics at different times. So this is constantly updated by API. The tariff information also comes from the WTO and from MacMap. It's updated regularly as well. So as soon as we have new tariff information, it appears there. There's certain indicators or certain information. For instance, we don't update all of the contact information on the Connect Americas is automatically updated as well, all of that business information. But for instance, if the IP email address changes, that may not be something that we update automatically. That's updated on a quarterly basis with WIPO. But so if you find that something may have changed, there is a chance that a couple of details, for instance, like an email address, may not be completely up to date. So what do you guys think? Do you think this could be useful for your members? So, I mean, the way that I hope you use Global Trade Helpdesk is that if you're thinking through, okay, I really want to know where I can diversify, what are the opportunities across markets, and to really have a comparison of all of the key factors in one single view, this is where you start with Global Trade Helpdesk. Once you identify what are those markets, where do I want to go, you're going to need to dig deeper, and you're going to need to go to national sources. You're going to need to get creative. But this gives you a really consolidated entry point into really managing strategic diversification and comparing opportunities across regions, across countries, across markets. So I hope that your members will be able to benefit from this and find new opportunities as well. But as I mentioned, I think Crystal put in a brief evaluation form. It's really like 3 minutes. We would love to know what you think and get a sense of if this is useful and if you have any suggestions on how to make it better. And once again, we would love to work with your members if you could be interested in the future, or if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Both Merhoz and I are at your service.
Anya, I think we have a question from one of the participants from WTC Moscow.
Mm-hmm. Can you read it?
Answering the question, Anna, the answer is yes. The members will be delighted to use this service. And I would like to thank you and UNCTAD, of course, for Trade Map, first of all, because we've been using it for quite some time right now, for
Great.
6 years myself, and it's very helpful. And the upgrade of this service is even better. So excellent. Thank you so much.
Great. No, I'm glad, and I mean, they're complementary, right? Like Global Trade Help Desk gives you an overview across all of the different sources, but sometimes you want to dig deeper and you're going to want to go back to Trade Map and you're going to want to consult the monthly import statistics in China at the national tariff line level. So I think both are useful and I'm really glad to hear you're already acquainted with them. Any last questions or comments before we close up? Because you've been very generous with your time.
I think I can quickly respond to Raja's question about whether we have the information regarding anti-dumping duties and other relevant trade remedies. So in the tariff section of the Global Trade Help Desk, we have a section called Trade Remedies. So the first module is market information. The second is, The second module is assess requirements, and there you can scroll through tariff section. And if there is a relevant anti-dumping duty or other trade remedial duties are applicable, it will appear in a different section under the heading Trade Remedies.
It's true. It will also appear, Mejos, just to complement, like if there is a restrictive trade remedy, underneath the tariff information on the market overview, there will be like a red flag and there will say there's a potentially restrictive remedy in place. Oftentimes they're at the company level, but you can see which companies from a specific country have been, let's say, blacklisted or will have face a higher tariff or face specific penalty. But yes, that information is included, but trade remedies thankfully are less common. But yes, for specific products, they can be quite important. But yes, that information is included as well. Wonderful. Mejos, did we answer most, if not all of the questions? How did we do?
I think we have responded to all the questions, but I think we have our information available. So.
If there's one last thing I can just show you all, because actually you guys are all trade experts, but if you aren't familiar with the harmonized system code, under our resources section, there's an HS finder that can also walk you through the different categories of products. So you can either do a keyword search or you can find your code within the mapping tree. So in case you aren't an HS code expert and you're looking for your product and you can't quite find it, that would be also something that I would really recommend having a look at. But thank you so much for your time and for your participation and for your enthusiasm. And please stay in touch and keep us posted if you have any questions or if you'd like to collaborate in the future. Thank you so much and wishing you a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you both.
Thanks,
Thank
Anna.
you.
Thanks, Anna.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you all.